The stream is now live. Okay, fantastic.
There's your cue.
There's my cue. Good morning, everybody. Well, that's hosting 101. Are we live? Is this on?
This is on.
Thank you, everybody, for coming along today to this next edition of the Strive and LinkedIn Lives. We have a really interesting topic to talk about today, and I don't mean interesting, I mean genuinely fascinating. The topic of the title sounds a little bland: how to build a resilient workplace culture, right? I mean, we've all heard and talked about resilience and wellness and well-being and all of those things, but to say we live in interesting times would be an understatement right now. We have economic circumstances causing anxiety. We have global geopolitical crises. We have wars being fought in various parts of the world. And I guess it's no wonder that a bunch of us are feeling just a little bit freaked out, to use a technical term. And so we thought today we'd bring together a highly talented panel and a fumbling host. So, we've got that well ticked, but definitely a highly talented panel to give us some tips and tricks on how we can survive in this current world. Before we do that, though, I wanted to take a moment to pay our respects to the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet today. Now, in my case, I'm in Melbourne, so that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So from whichever part of the land that you are meeting on, join with us as we pay our respects to the traditional owners and we honour their elders past and present. All right, so I would like to introduce our two panelists because you don't really want to hear from me all that often because they are much more intelligent than I am. So I'm very delighted today to have the Chief People Officer of SPC, Michelle Strong, join us. And also Callie Zingari, who is I practiced before and I got it wrong straight away. The People and Culture Manager of Lawyers on Demand. So why don't we just kick off with a little bit of an introduction from you both, from the people who don't know you, and then we can launch into some of the challenges that we're going to be facing. Let's go, Michelle. There you go. You're on my top left.
Thank you. Well, it's exciting to be here, and I'm just aspiring to meet the standard of someone wearing such a fabulous outfit and a stunning hat. So I hope I can be as entertaining as you. But I have a long career in the people and culture industry, or HR, as it was back in the day, or is still today in many places. And I've worked across a number of different industries and particularly in the manufacturing, the FMCG, food manufacturing and pharmaceutical spaces. And as you can imagine, there are always changes in those industries. Many years ago, I caught myself saying, when we fully integrate this new acquisition, things will get back to usual. And then I realised there is no usual anymore. There is no normal. The only normal is change. Change is constant. So I've had a lot of experience in managing through change, dealing with ambiguity, and I am really excited to share with you any insights that I may have from those times.
Fantastic. All right, thank you. And Callie, let's tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Michelle. I thought you were talking about me with the nice outfit and the hat, but I'll
You
wear a
do
hat
look
next
small.
time. I
I
promise.
can't.
You so do you. Cute. Hello, everybody. My name is Callie Zingari, and I work at Lawyers on Demand, a concilio company. I've had, again, multiple decades of HR experience. We're going to call it HR, Michelle, because it's HR. We've got people and we've got the culture and we've got the HR. I've had multiple different roles across multiple different industries, exactly like yourself, Michelle, ranging from federal government, state government, corporate, finance, whatever it is. I haven't done any of the things that you've done in any of those interesting parts of the world. So I'm super keen to hear how that may differ from some of the more corporate stuff that I've been involved in. And I think it's a really poignant topic. Michael, you hit it on the head with your introduction around where we're at right now, not just in the workforce in Australia. People keep saying the R word, talking about recession, we're talking about change. We've got, again, the globe, the news is harrowing at times. So I think it's really poignant to discuss these sorts of things right now and to know that I don't think people are alone. I think people think they are, but they're not. I think we're all going through it right now. So glad to be here.
Outstanding. And for those in the audience who don't know me, my name is Michael Delaney. I'll be the host today. I am the head of people and culture. Yeah, I call it people and culture because I came from recruiting, so I never wanted to end up in HR. The head of people and culture for an e-commerce tech startup called Preezy. I've done startups since 2007, so my world has always been uncertainty and change. I don't really know any other version of the world. So it's interesting to hear from people who come through a mix of environments and backgrounds to see how that can come to the fore. So for those watching, if you have any questions, please drop them into the comments and we will come to them when we have some time. But to kick us off, I think we all know one of the highest human needs is safety, right? If we feel safe, we tend to be able to be our authentic selves, to be more comfortable in our world, and to generally do a better job. But as leaders in a business, in unsafe times, that can be really challenging. So how would you say leaders can effectively kind of communicate and reinforce, characteristics like resilience within their teams, either direct teams or wider teams, during these, particularly uncertain and at times unsafe, experiences we're having right now?
Michelle, I'll kick off if you don't mind. I want to let me tell you a little tale about our current situation at Lawyers on Demand. We were acquired by Concilio, who are a US company, last August. So it's been a year now. The year has absolutely flown. So I started just a few months prior to the acquisition. So I had just gotten my feet under the desk when we had obviously a huge change happen within the business. I think one of the things that we've seen over the last year, particularly being acquired by such a large company when we were perhaps a sort of small to medium business within the Australia particularly, has just been the behemoth of resources that we've had access to. Some of the, obviously, the IT changes and the system changes that we've need to work through. And then there's the division of who does what in the business, what does that look like for me? And I think over the last few months, we've really seen people start to say, what is my role in this business? Who am I? What is my part in this more global business now? Where do I sit and where do I fit? And the one thing that I believe, and again, if anyone from Lord is on the line, please let me know if I'm wrong. One of the things that I think that we've done really well and that I try to do on a daily basis, because I'm going through it too, is to actually acknowledge the uncertainty, acknowledge that it's difficult, acknowledge that you are also going through the same feelings, and giving people that space to feel those feelings. I'm not trying to get all woo woo, but I think that giving people the opportunity to think, are my feelings valid? Is everybody feeling this? And having those outlets and forums for people to say, I feel this way, I'm feeling like this. I might not have the solution to everything, but to give people the freedom to be able to express how they feel and to acknowledge that it's not okay and maybe it is a little bit hard. I think we've done really, really well. And that, to your question, Michael, has actually created more of a safe space that people know that they can actually articulate how they feel and articulate how they're going through things, rather than being stifled and inundated with emails telling everybody how great they're doing and just keep doing what you're doing. So I think for us, we've done a really good job of letting people sit in their discomfort and allowing them to actually have that space to feel those feelings, because as you said, everybody wants to feel safe, but sometimes safety is in acknowledging that you're also in the same bucket, maybe a different bucket than what you were a couple of months ago. So Michelle, super keen to hear how you've gone through things like that too.
Oh, I absolutely support the importance of providing people with a safe place, particularly in those first moments of announcing a change to the business, because there will be some big feelings, and those big feelings may express themselves in a way that you wouldn't typically welcome in the workplace. But we have to allow people to express themselves and to give them the safety and to help them work through that in the most positive and productive way. So I think that's so important. And when you are particularly impacted by something that's happening yourself as a leader as well, it's actually okay to be vulnerable and to say, I don't have all of the answers, but what I can tell you is that I will give you as much information as I can when I can. So please don't feel the need to speculate or to be worried or concerned about what's happening. If I know something and if I'm at liberty to share that, I will share that with you at the first opportunity. And there'll be lots of reasons why you can't share every single detail. But people generally will respect that if they know that if there's an update, they will hear it from you and they will hear it at the first possible opportunity. So I think that safe place and also that commitment to that ongoing communication is so critical. And updates regularly. Sometimes we don't have an update, we don't have an answer to a question, but it's actually okay to say, I don't have an update this week. I don't have an answer to that question, but this is what I'm trying to do to get the answer for you, so that people know that when I can't see the movement, there is something happening, and I will know the answer to my question at the first opportunity that's available. I suppose the other thing that I would add, I'll
No, please, no. It was such a poignant point, though. So poignant. Just if I could do it.
Thank you. The only other thing I was going to add is that it's so important to know your people. It's so important to be connected to your people. So because of course we make assumptions about what a person might need or not need, want or not want, what's going to happen to them in the future, how is this change going to impact them. But unless we ask that question, unless we know our people, we're making assumptions, and those assumptions can actually be harmful at times. So it's really important to have that direct connection. And that's, again, coming back to that ongoing communication. But it can't just be town hall meetings. It needs to be individual discussions, checking in, how are you doing this week, and that ongoing connection.
Michelle, I just wanted to touch on, Michael, the comms piece, right? What an important part when we just think about communication just in general. And you're so right around, and I think what we've done really well here, and shout out to the MD here at LOD, Paul Cowling, has been exceptional at communicating with us, even when there is nothing to say. So again, as you said, there is some fear and anxiety around the unknown, and sometimes when you are quiet, people can be, they go into their own little spaces and worlds around why you're quiet. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. The comms piece is such a wild ride, and you need to be able to communicate with your people. Also, I don't think there's anything I don't know if over communicating is possible in times of change. I think that you can saturate people's emails and people get a little bit of email fatigue. I appreciate that. However, there are some things that I think are important to say. And again, I think we've done really well here around the forums with which we say that information. It's not just emails. We have the town halls, we have individual one-on-ones, we have, our smaller groups are sort of getting together. So comms, Michelle, massive piece of it all as well. Absolutely agree. Sorry, Michael, back to you.
No, go for it.
In
this is
studio.
Great. Indeed. So I think one of the things that is often undervalued is telling people about the bad things, right? We spend a long time going, oh, look, if you tell people the bad things, they're going to freak out. That might cause them to be uncertain. Maybe they'll leave. But these things exist anyway. And if you have the honesty with people, I think they feel a greater sense of buy-in. If you say, yeah, this could go really wrong and it could be a spectacular failure, but if it goes right, and here's all the reasons why it might, this will be really good. You kind of build in a known risk, right? The risk is still there, but it's less uncertain. So it's like that, like if you're walking into a dark room and you hear a funny noise, like the noise freaks you out. You turn the light on and it's just, the window settling. If you knew going in that the window might settle and make a freaky noise, you suddenly don't think you're on the set of Scream. You just go, yeah, that's kind of one of those things that happens.
Yes.
I want to kind of dig into this a little further. Before the session came live, we were talking about the differences of contextual language, and very uncoolly, we dropped skibbity and lol and a few other terms into our conversation. So if you're in an organization which has very different generational models, and not everybody does, right? Some are very mature, some are very young, but most businesses, you do have a range of generational models. How do you kind of come up with ways in terms of communication of making it relevant and easily digestible to those different kind of age ranges and generational ranges that might feel very differently about honesty versus I don't want to know about it versus don't tell me anything until it's really happening. Balancing that as a real challenge.
It is. And I think it's fair to say that you are never going to please everybody. And be kind to yourself about that, because there will always be someone who said, well, you should have told me this, or you shouldn't have told me that, or will judge the way you've communicated. But for me, I take continuous feedback, and I want continuous feedback from the staff to tell us, are we hitting it? Are we actually telling you what you want to know and how you want to know it? And they'll tell you if you if they don't like you trying something in particular that's new, then they'll absolutely tell you that. And as I always say, and people get sick of me saying it, feedback is a gift. So I take that gift of that feedback and I use it. So we would typically, in all of the companies that I've worked for, use all of the different channels at our disposal. And we are so fortunate that we have a lot of different communication channels. So there's not just a town hall or an email. We have Microsoft Teams where we can have group meetings so that we can give everybody the same message simultaneously. We can take videos so that people can access a video at a time and a space that works for them. We collect questions and answers from different groups of people and distribute them to everyone, so everyone has access to the exact same information. So we use all of the different channels, and we can have these live sessions like these where people can ask questions in real time and have them answered in real time. So there's so many different channels of communication that we can employ, and for me the trick is that we try them all, and we take the feedback from our staff as to what's working for them and what's not working from them. But also we're kind to ourselves when they say, did not like that. Okay, did not like that, I'll do it differently next time.
Yeah,
Okay. And
absolutely.
Callie, you've got lawyers, right? Which is a completely different sort of environment, right? I
Is
mean,
it ever?
typically seen
Shout out
as,
to all the lawyers out there.
yeah, like serious people with serious jobs to do, and everybody's serious, but there's a certain persona of lawyers. So like it must be really interesting to have a younger lawyer versus a veteran of 30 years in the business. How does it work in a more corporate environment?
No, and you are absolutely correct. I think you hit it on the head around the sort of generational bridges that we need to sometimes build in order to be successful when we're looking to either change or alter the way that we work or our culture. We have, again, at LOD, we have our internal lawyers and we have our secondees. So we have our sort of flex talent that work for our clients. So we do have lawyers that are sitting in our corporate HQ offices. So you're absolutely right. There is people work so very differently. And we've had these conversations since the day I arrived. How do we make it good for everybody? And by good I mean, what is the level that you will compromise in order to make other people happy? I think it work sometimes is like a relationship. We have to remember that we are all working together, and to be happy some people do need to compromise, and we do need to think about how we can necessarily maybe just move with the times, but also make sure people are comfortable. Michelle, you sort of hit it on the head earlier around, we've got a medium with which we communicate, but then it's also who decides what we do and don't say. Who decides, as you said, Michael, what should we be saying? And then if we say that, did we say the wrong thing? How do we learn? What do we do in these times where you have to remember the people who are getting the information are also learning as they go? So sometimes, again, as you said, Michelle, we make decisions to put information out there that perhaps is a little bit more confronting to people than it may have been, a few months prior. And then we put out information which perhaps doesn't hit the mark and doesn't give people enough. So I think you're right. It's about making sure we're leveraging all of the forms of comms that we do have, but then what are we saying and how are we getting that feedback? And at LOD, which I so appreciate, HQ, as I love you so much, they will tell me if something didn't hit the mark, didn't come across, if they need more information, don't do it like that again. So again, Michelle, feedback is a gift, and I love it. We love a gift, but it actually really makes our jobs a lot easier because we know what we should and shouldn't say next time. So agree, the generational stuff, Michael, is we could do a whole session on that in
Yep.
and of itself in regards to the workforce and how we're moving forward. But from a change perspective, yeah, there's certain times where perhaps people need maybe more information and more time and more lead in than perhaps others do. And it's definitely becoming apparent with the new generations coming through the workforce. Really lucky to be that millennial in the middle where we get to see both, coming from the top and from underneath.
Okay, excellent.
Millennial in the middle. I'm going to coin that
Millennial
phrase.
in the middle.
Writing
There
it
we go.
down. Yep.
That sounds like a podcast waiting to be launched.
It is, isn't it?
TM, anyone? TM.
TM, yeah. Just that's
Pending,
safe
pending.
space. No one else will take that from you because it's just the three of us having a chat.
Thanks. Yeah. Of course.
We do have a question from the audience from Laura Clark, which I'd like to interject now because it's going to lead into something else I wanted to ask you, right? So she says, do you ever touch on building resilience outside of work? I did a resilience course once, which really focused on taking care of yourself outside of work, sleep, diet, exercise, education, and advice. Now, as a separate piece to that, there's been a lot of focus across employers of looking after their employees' mental health and providing wellness programs. But the data now from the employee surveys is saying that most of it has missed the mark because it's a one-size-fits-all. Here it is. This is what you get. And people wanting perhaps to take ownership of this. And I know mental health, it's become one of those things that we talk about a lot. And I think we're all afraid of ignoring it, but we're also afraid of addressing it because what does that mean we open ourselves up to? So how do you kind of balance the need of trying to help people grow these resilient skills in their personal world, which hopefully they can then bring to work and apply that, in an everyday basis?
Yeah. Michelle, I'll sort of kick off. Something comes straight to my mind. The right to disconnect it starts up next week, the new law, the new legislation coming in, and LOD is founded on flexible working. That is essentially the entire business model of Lawyers on Demand. It is giving people the opportunity to come into law work and do it their way. So being able to work part-time for clients, being able to pick and choose the clients and what they want to do at particular times. That's for our secondee and our flex talent model. But also here at HQ, this is an absolute passion project of mine. I believe that when you are hired at a corporate workforce, you are an adult, you are getting remunerated in Australian dollars, and you are old enough and ugly enough to manage your own time and know we are more operationally focused rather than dictatorial around being at the desk from 9 to 5. So we are so flexible, and we've had to be for HQ around, Michael, we were talking the other day about US calls. I start at 6 a.m, finish those up at 9, start again London at 5 p.m. During the day, I model that behavior for other staff. So does our CEO, so does our head of business operations, so does our head of legal. They say, I'm going to be doing this during the day. And again, you don't need to even articulate what you're doing. You need to be able to manage your own time to make sure that you are not working over and above to burn yourself out to then, come out at the end with some issues that we're trying to negate. So we sort of grab that really early in the piece. And when people are hired through LOD, it is all about flexible working. You get your job done in the hours that you need to get your job done. Some of us are working mad hours overseas. Some of us are not in our core business in Australia, but we all understand each other now because we've communicated that. If I'm not available on this day at this time, it's because I've done calls at this time and I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. So we've been really good around making sure that that is modeled behavior from our executive team, but also it is something that we're advocating as far as that mental health and well-being is concerned. Obviously, the right to disconnect really just emphasizes what we already do here, which I think is wonderful for us and a great win. But there's also, we have multiple affinity groups here at LOD and now through Concilio around our well-being and how we actually can work together as a team to do that. So I'm very much, I really dislike tokenistic, greenwashing of anything. I don't like people just saying things for the sake of saying things. We really walk the walk and talk the talk at LOD. So we try very hard to make sure people are involved in those affinity groups. And we're not throwing pizza parties and asking people to work 10 hours a day. Let's just say that. So we're really walking the walk and talking the talk. So I'm super proud of what we're doing in that space. And I just wanted to touch, it's basically just dinging our own bell there for a couple of minutes, Michelle. So we've got this one down pat, I think.
I love that.
And just as an aside, I saw a meme the other day from somebody in PNC, and they were talking about, on the one side was all of the things that employers think that people want, right? Like pay time off and flexibility and,
pay increases,
engagement groups and things. And on the right-hand side was a pay rise and pizza. And if you gave people a pay rise and pizza, they were happy enough. And I know that's a bit of an in PNC joke for anyone in the audience there, but I mean, I think there is that, like, we focus on all the things, but should we sometimes simplify it? I mean, Michelle, how do, work in a very different environment. Like, do you try and incorporate that external kind of resilience approach into a workplace? Is it even possible to do that?
Well, it looks very different in an operational environment because the kinds of flexibility that are available for employees who are manufacturing something or processing food or manufacturing pharmaceuticals will obviously look different than someone who can genuinely work flexibly and can theoretically do their work entirely remotely. So it definitely looks different, and what it means is we have to work harder to incorporate flexibility because it's not a matter of I can work anywhere at any time. I literally cannot. I literally need to be on site to do elements of my job. And if I work in production, then that is where my job is. But flexibility, I always try and remind people that flexibility is not just about remote work. There's a lot of different ways that we can be flexible with one another, and sometimes it can be that ad hoc flexibility. But to your point about resilience and the external environment and how we bring that in, that the important thing for me is that we understand what it is that charges our batteries, but we also understand what it is that drains us of energy. And we try and incorporate that understanding into our employees so that they can make good choices for themselves in terms of how they manage themselves both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And there's a terrific program out there called The Great Recharge. And a good friend of mine, Sharon Kilmartin, is one of the facilitators of that. And basically what they teach you is what is it for you as an individual that charges your battery, and what strategies can you put in place that can charge your battery. And you can actually run these sessions within your workplace, or you can just educate your employees as to how they can maintain their battery. And what they need to do at times when it is tough or when there is a peak in workload, because there will be times that, we have to work longer hours because it's end of financial year, end of quarter, it's budget time, it's strategy time, or whatever the case may be, the project is being completed, whatever the case may be in our individual workplaces. So there'll be times of peak pressure on us, and we need to make sure that we're making really good choices about how we keep ourselves charged during those times, but also give ourselves permission to recharge, and that we need to build that in. And it's important that managers and companies understand what recharge looks like, so that on the pressure performance curve, if we keep our performance at the highest levels at all times, or the pressure at the highest level at all times, that's going to lead directly to burnout. I might have short periods where I can be in my highest performance on the pressure performance curve, but I sometimes need to come back into that comfort zone where I'm taking the opportunity to do some of the other things that I need to do that are not that peak pressure and that are not putting me under strain. So I think it's really all about understanding as leaders what it is that can drain our employees and giving them the opportunity to recharge. And the leaders themselves need to be educated as to that, so that they can facilitate that. They recognize it, they know what it looks like when an employee is under strain, but they also know how to build in times where we are a little bit calmer, or I can take a moment, I can take some time, I can put strategies in place for my team, or let them choose to put strategies in place for themselves, because ultimately we have to decide what it is that's going to drain our batteries as individuals and how we're going to respond to that, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. And that level of understanding helps us all make the best choices, both as leaders and as individuals managing our own resilience.
Okay, very interesting. And some really good things. And Renee's just dropped in a link to Career Balance, Great Recharge, into the chat. And Laura, thank you very much for the question. That took us in a whole different direction, which is great. This is why we love questions from the audience. So if anyone else has something they want to put in there, please feel free, because we'll deal with it in real time. I want to think now, I think a bit more specifically about, all right, if you are a leader or a manager, whatever term you want to use, right, of a team, and we're thinking about how do we make things more resilient. And one of, I think, the pieces behind that is being adaptable, right? Because why do we feel uncertain? Because things are changing. And if you want things at a fixed point, it can be really difficult when it's not there. And so having that adaptability or flexibility, whatever term you want. But how does a manager come to their team and create a space of adaptability where you have the permission to be adaptable, because maybe you're in a role where you have to do the same thing every day the same way. I mean, I imagine in law, for example, you can't just rewrite the rules. Oh, I don't like that ruling. Right to disconnect. I think we're just going to ignore that. That's for other businesses, right? I mean, you have to be adaptable to everything, but it's not a natural skill for a lot of people. And in fact, many ways, you talk about that performance curve, Michelle. We want people to be predictable. We want to know that you're going to do this amount of work at this amount of time with this amount of accuracy on a really regular basis, because then you're a set and forget employee. And don't we just want all of them to be like that? But that's not the real world. So what advice would you give a manager trying to build adaptability into their team? And I think that more holistically, because on an individual basis, that's tough. But on a team-wide basis, it's going to be even more complicated. Sorry, that was the longest question that I may have ever asked in my life.
No, it's great.
Look, I would start if your team tends to be fairly structured in their approach to things, then a nice entry point is giving them a structure that they can use to be adaptable, like the 5 whys. So if I'm, for example, if I'm manufacturing pharmaceuticals, everything I do is very structured, very rigid, because we have a lot of requirements that we need to comply with to be able to do that safely and at the highest quality. But by using a technique like the 5 whys, if I'm trying to come up with some new and innovative ideas, just by simply going through the 5 whys process allows us to tease out what are the opportunities that perhaps we haven't thought about. And it might get a bit wild and crazy, but it's great to get those brainstorming ideas out there, and with that perspective of there are no wrong answers. We don't necessarily have to put every suggestion into action, but there are no wrong answers. Let's actually think of all of the ways we could approach this particular situation or this problem or this opportunity. So I think if your team is very structured to start with, then a nice gentle entry point is to probably gift them with a little bit of a structured approach to move into a more innovative space. And the other thing I'd probably say is that we need to make it safe for people to try new things and for them to not be right in the first instance. So we don't take unnecessary risks that are going to put anybody at risk or put the company at risk. But what we do is we make it safe for people to make a mistake. And we understand that if a person makes a mistake, that's a learning opportunity. If we punish someone for everything that they do that isn't 100% correct, then that person is not going to take risks. That person is not going to be innovative. You will see them follow the rules rigidly, one step at a time, until the end of time. But if you do have the opportunity to make it a safe space to try something new, and if it doesn't work the first time, that's actually okay. Let's learn from it. What are we going to do differently next time? Even, God forbid, open up about our own mistakes, so that we can share with our employees that we as leaders are not perfect, and we've tried things and they didn't work out. It makes it safe for other people to do the same thing as well. And that's where all of a sudden it's okay for them to be more creative and innovative.
What are you talking about, Michelle? I've never made a mistake. How dare you? How dare you insinuate? So true, though. So true. I think I've got a different slant on this one, because I hear, yes, team, but what about the manager being perhaps a little bit more controlling and rigid in their sort of ability to maybe let go and sort of start to integrate into what the new normal is? I think, again, you sort of hit the nail on the head with the team, Michelle, but thinking about, as you mentioned, Michael, there are different folks in organizations who are different occupations, and they come in with a different set of blueprints around how work is supposed to be done or what things are supposed to be happening. And then perhaps they do have this team who is definitely crying out for more flexibility, freedom, autonomy, whatever that looks like. And then thinking, how do I manage that? How do I manage my own feelings of perhaps control equals stability? My work is determined on my worth. How does that translate to then looking at these younger teams, and how we can sort of give those managers the ability to sit back and allow their teams to do things that are perhaps new and perhaps fresh. So I think, again, from what I've done here at LOD, and again, I'm not saying everything is correct that I've done here, but agree with you, Michelle. It's about allowing the team to speak. And I mean the team to say, this is what I would like, and that would really make me able to do my job a little bit better. And again, Michelle, giving
Mm,
things a try. You got to try things. You can't go in with a no attitude. I think saying yes and is a little bit more, again, very
mm,
corny. But I think, I say this to my husband a lot, go in with a yes and let's see where, if we get back to no. Coming up with that immediate blocker of no puts people on the back foot and gives them that real lack of control over their own environment. And Michael, at the very start, you articulated it is really uncertain times right now, and giving people a little bit more control over their own work and how they're doing that, I think can actually give people a lot more of a breath out, and you'll actually see more output and more comfort from people than saying, no, this is the way we've done it, this is the way we're going to do it. So again, from a managerial perspective, if you're a manager out there who's perhaps struggling with this new world of work, which is, yes, people can do their job outside of 9 to 5. Yes, people can do it from home and they can do it from the office. Yes, people are human beings that can do Pilates if they want to in the middle of the day. It's okay. Those things are okay, and everyone will be okay. And as long as the output continues to be of
mm.
the level that you're requiring, then there really isn't an issue there. So we just need to look internally, I think, about how we can get our leaders across the line and look at how that flexibility impacts them. So, sorry, Michael, I heard a different side to that question.
No, this is great, right? Because there is no one answer to any of these
Yeah,
things. And, I was thinking about it from my perspective, right? We're a startup, and right now we're in heavy R&D, which means
yeah,
every single day there are probably 20 fails, 20 things that we're like,
yeah,
we've solved that. Oh, no, we haven't. Or now we have solved that, and that's opened up 5 other problems that we didn't
yeah.
even know we had. And I think it's a really interesting thing. And Michelle, I'm glad you brought up the term mistake and failure and these sort of things, right? Because it's such a pejorative term, right?
Mm,
We are taught from a very early age, don't fail, don't be a failure, like grow continuously, learn continuously, improve, reach your goals. You can do anything that you want. But the truth is, so much about learning is in the things that we get wrong, not the things we get right. And yes,
mm,
I know that's a coffee mug that's sitting in probably 50 offices around the country right now. But if we don't give ourselves the space and give our teams then the space to say, you're going to do some things that won't work, and that's okay, as long as it's not mission critical, right? Don't delete the entire customer database or something, like that. That would
mm,
Good
probably
one.
be bad.
Good one.
It might
Yep.
be
Yep.
frowned upon. But outside of that, it is difficult because you're right. From a leadership perspective, one of the hardest things to do, particularly I think often when you're an earlier leader, is to let your team do their job and not jump in and go, no, you're doing it wrong. Let me save you some time by showing you how to do it the right way right now. By all means, you want people doing it in the best way that they can. But I think there's a big difference between the term right and the term best. And best is best for where we are now. And I often feel that when we're at that point of uncertainty, when we're at that point of fear of failure is one of the
Mm,
biggest things that drives us.
yeah.
And that then I think can stifle innovation. And Michelle, you mentioned innovation. And obviously in my world, innovation is a byword.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm working at a startup, so I haven't said innovation in every second sentence, I'm failing a KPI. But really, when you think about a lot of roles, innovation is not something that you can readily adopt. Right? I mean, you mentioned on process roles, right? You don't want someone to innovate the way of manufacturing a pharmaceutical. You don't want someone to innovate the way of dealing with a high court case and what might be an interpretation that needs to be applied down the line. But there are still ways perhaps of flexing things. So
Mm,
when you think of innovation, what are some of the small things, right? Let's not reinvent the wheel and change the world, because I think all of us, we can't do that. But we can maybe do things at a more granular level. So I realize I sprung this on you with no preparation, right? But for both of you, if you could just take a moment to think about what's a couple of things that you think you've done to innovate in your job that is just a little flex from where it was, that's given you maybe more freedom, more control, more comfort, more of a safe space.
yeah. I can start on that one, I think. And again, tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here. But For me personally, I have been lucky enough to really lean into the integration. So I really lent into us being acquired since the first day. I thought, right, great, yes, global corporation, access to the L&D that we can use, the policies we can leverage, the systems that we'll have at our fingertips. I was over the moon with excitement, and that was me. And then I looked around at the people who had long tenure at Lawyers on Demand Australia and thought, oh, why are they not as excited as I am? Well, it's because it's a huge deal for them, and this is an absolutely massive change, and it's going to shake every foundation that they've had over the last decade, etc. So for me, when I think about innovations and it's how I'm streamlining communication from Concilio and feeding that back into Lawyers on Demand. So for me, at the start, I sat back like we all did and allowed the emails to come through from our new organization without any filter. People were receiving these messages, perhaps didn't really understand how it affected them or what it had to do with them. We were immediately integrated into this large global organization. And I think for me, one of the things I've done is start taking a bit more control over those comms. So saying, before you send that out, send it to me and I'll send it to them, because that's something that it comes from me. It's a little bit more effective. It's a little bit more personal, and I can tailor it to the audience that it's going to. So Michelle, again, hitting on that comms piece around not just what you're saying, but who's delivering that message and whether or not people see that relevance. So for me, really, really small, and I don't know if it's an innovation necessarily. I mean, look, I've done some great SharePoint folder updating and new contract
Oof.
renewals, but that's
Oh,
another
settle
dry top.
down.
I know, mate. It's too early in the morning to talk about that sexy stuff. But
Very sick.
so hot, Michelle. But really, that sort of stuff, when I'm thinking about streamlining the way that we are delivering messages to make it more palatable and to make those things easier for people to digest and understand. For me, I'm really proud of being able to do that and actually standing up and saying, do we have to do it this way? And could I take it on myself? And could I start doing that a little bit more effectively here? So that's just one little thing from me.
Excellent. Hey, small things, little things every day add up to really big change over time. Again, another coffee cup that's sitting in a lot of offices. But I think it's important for us to keep our eye on the fact that we can't always change the big things, but we can have an influence over the smaller things.
Correct. Yep.
Absolutely. So I think we can sneak up on innovation with a continuous improvement mindset. So what can we do to make things better in a little bit today? How can I create a greater efficiency? How can I eliminate a little bit of waste, whether it's waste time, waste product, waste process? So are we building our systems around unnecessary bureaucracy? Can I eliminate some bureaucracy? I mean, in people and culture, as Michael will know, we love our bureaucracy, we love our forms, we love our approvals, we love our procedures. And so sometimes we need to take a step back and say, what's the problem I'm trying to solve here? What is it that I need from this procedure? What is it I need from this approval path that perhaps I could streamline, and I could make sure that only the relevant stakeholders are part of this approval process? Or my policy has gone from 25 pages of detailed information that I want you to memorize to a single page of policy, of the principles that we're actually trying to live by. And so there are so many ways that we can continuously improve to make things simpler for people. And in the people and culture world, because there's so much administration and bureaucracy that we can tumble into without meaning to, we just need to challenge ourselves to think, well, what's the best way? And we are actually blessed in that there are so many forums like this one where you can leverage the learnings from other people and other approaches to a different or to the same issue that perhaps you hadn't thought about, and use that. I always say with these things, steal with pride, and I like to share with people, and I like to make sure that I can leverage other people's learnings as well. So there are so many different ways to approach being innovative. It's not necessarily a massive fireworks. It's not necessarily something big and showy and flashy and shiny, although it can be, but the incremental continuous improvement, let's try something new. I think that's another way to move into that innovative space. And it's a little bit less scary for people who perhaps are a bit more wedded to their administration and their forms and their checklists.
Excellent. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, continuous improvement, because there's a burden of expectation on that, right? And we're all carrying heavy loads as it is, right? And just doing our job some days can be as much as we can possibly carry without the expectation then to be going, oh, what else? What could I have done better today? And I think, if I think of all of the things that you've both talked about, right? And yeah, I'm moving into summary mode, but like I like to put things into a plot here, right? So the first thing I think that I'm really taking away from this is it's okay to feel however you feel, right? You don't have to justify. Yeah, you can't come to work and be a bad teammate, bad team member, bad employee, right? Like no one's coming into work and losing their minds and creating chaos for people. But if you do happen to be feeling stressed or tense or frustrated or nervous or whatever, that's okay. But what you do have then is an onus to yourself to say, all right, well, this is how I'm feeling. Is this how I want to feel? And if it's not, what can I do to change that? And we spoke about change being a challenge, right? So everyone likes certainty, but change and adaptability, they kind of go hand in hand. And in the world we live in today, things change really quickly. And I don't just mean like the TikTok trend yesterday, that when you talk about it with your kids today makes you sound like you're just so past it. Like, why are you still talking about that? That finished at 4:23 yesterday, and
Yes,
no
you
one talks about it
did,
anymore.
Michael. Apparently, I was having a brat summer, and now I'm very mindful and very demure and very.
Yeah,
I don't. Which one am I? Yeah, apparently the
brat
one
is
ended
so
and
3
brat is
cycles ago.
over, and we are
Yeah,
now very mindful, very demure, very
indeed.
classy. Okay.
And I realise that we say that facetiously, but for a particular generation, that can be really important, right? That ability to take on things and be up to date and very current. So I think change and resilience is different for everybody, and we need to feel safe in ourselves for that. And if we're a manager or a leader, we need to feel safe that our teams are also going to be displaying this differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the other thing that probably has come through on this is that there is no right way. There's no like silver bullet. There's no, wave your wand and there it is. Like we're not Harry Potter. I'm dating myself now, but Expelliarmus, that's not happening. And all the bad things are going to go away, right? So, because, yeah, as I said at the start, when you think about this, right, yeah, inflation, recession, rent, food, insecure employment, that's just on an everyday basis. But then there's the bigger picture things of, the global conflicts that are out there. There's a lot of things right now that would give every one of us every right to be feeling really, really unsettled and uncertain. And our resilience stocks could be quite low. So I think the second big takeaway for me on this is to give ourselves the space to recharge our batteries and take some time for ourselves. And it's been mindfulness, yoga, Pilates, going for a run, listening to, metalcore, whatever it is that you do that makes you feel good and gives you a chance to just put all of that aside. You should absolutely prioritize that, because the most important person that you have in your world is yourself. And if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anyone else. And we all have lots and lots of responsibilities. And then I think the final thing, and I think this came right at the end, but Michelle, I really, really like this, the power of community and network, whether it's friends, professional, sessions like this, right? The power of being able to sit and hear other people who've experienced things in a different way, but that maybe as a result of that have a viewpoint that you wouldn't have considered. Because we know this, right? Like we come to the same problem we've had and we're resistant because we haven't solved it. And we're already seeing where it's broken down. So the chance to get information from others and have them go, oh, have you tried this? And you think, that seems so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? Because when you're in the middle of something, like you can't see the forest for the trees. Yeah. So I think everybody should readily embrace whatever environment, network, space is out there, friends, family, professional, to give themselves some different ideas. And also that shared community shows you you're not alone. And if there's one thing I think that all of us want right now is to not feel alone. We want to feel like that it's not just me going through this, because then it does make it less fearful, less uncertain, less unsafe.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Michael. I had written down here, just making sure everyone knows you are not alone. In a very untherapy way, you really aren't alone. I promise you, we're all feeling something so similar. It is so heavy right now. Everything is a little bit wild. And I think, just again, the acknowledgement is I think the first step, because I think people often, as you said, think that, is it me? Everyone else seems so okay, and everyone's really good at masking at certain times and getting through what they need to get through, but you are so not alone. We are so kind to our children and our teenagers, and we talk about their feelings being allowed space and give them space, and when we forget about doing that for ourselves. Sounds really corny, but I'm not saying treat yourself like a child, but treat yourself a little bit like a child and go and do what it is that you'd like to do and let yourself feel what you want to feel. Again, not getting woo woo, but I think it's good to acknowledge. It will help.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Well, ladies, an amazing session. Thank you very much for bringing all of your wisdom, your humor, your joy, your thoughts, your ideas, and bringing your very different backgrounds. I thought it was interesting, completely different backgrounds, and yet some very similar things and parts. And then other parts, as you can tell, completely different. And it's like, wow, this is a great way of doing things. So Michelle and Callie, we are very grateful for the time that you've given us. To the audience who have come along, thank you very much for attending. We hope you've taken something from this. If you have liked this and you know that there's someone in your network, speaking of sharing things that you think would be good, the recording will be up later. So share it widely. Give everybody the access to an opportunity to give themselves some time out to focus and think about resilience. To the good people of Striving, LJ and Renee in the background, keeping us all on track and making sure that we didn't blow the feed up. Thank you for your support. And there will be another LinkedIn Live coming soon, so keep an eye out on another interesting topic. But until then, thank you very much for coming today, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.
Michelle. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.